Coaching is a way of bringing about positive change, and it's got a really good track record in companies, for personal development, with families, and a whole load of other things. It's particularly useful when people feel stuck or that they have a mental block preventing them from moving towards whatever future they desire. Good coaches have skills, understanding, and experience that can bring a client to insights about how to move forward. But there's no magic or mystery to coaching, and the basic ideas that make it function so well are actually quite easy to understand and put into action. My name is Benjamin Constable, and among other things, I'm a coach and I'm a member of the International Coach Federation. In this video, I'm going to guide you through the basic structure of a coaching session and give you some ideas of how you could put this into practice. If you'd like to follow the session and try out coaching yourself right now, it could be useful to have a pen and some paper handy, and I'll invite you to write some things down at various points during the video. So a coaching session is divided into three main sections that reflect the natural process we follow when we make pretty much any successful changes in our lives. And we can think of this process as an arrow. The first section of the arrow is called contracting, and this is about identifying an objective for the session. The middle section is about finding solutions and ways to work around any hurdles. And the final section is about committing to next steps. We'll look at all three sections in a little more detail in a moment. But there are also two smaller sections to the coaching arrow that are no less important. Before starting, it's vital to create a safe space, a space where you, the client, feel comfortable to experiment and put negative ideas and distracting thoughts on hold. Without this, you're simply not going to enter fully or willingly into the process. And at the end of any coaching session, there's a moment of celebration. This is about acknowledging the progress made, and in a process that's almost entirely future-focused, it's about bringing the joy of change into the present as well. So take a deep breath and just slow down your thinking for a moment. Get into a position where you're comfortable and notice sensations in your body and sounds around you that remind you that you're part of a living world. Let your body and mind know that you're in a place for creating change and that you're going to put self-judgment to one side while you're coaching yourself. The contract is made by answering three questions. The wording can vary and should be connected to the answers you give, but the basic meaning of the first question is, what do you want? This could also be worded as, what would be a great outcome for this session? What would you like to create? Objectives need to be positive and to be things within your control. That is, specific things that you can do and that don't rely on the actions, reactions, or the will of other people. In a moment, I'm going to invite you to pause the video and write down or to visualize what you want. Is it something that you can control? Is it something positive? If it isn't, how could you reframe your want in order to bring it under your control? For example, if your initial objective is for your boss to stop making you angry, a way to bring it into your control might be by saying, I want to stop getting angry at my boss. And how can you make this positive? Being angry is what you don't want, but what do you want? How would you like to be with your boss? How would you like to feel in order to be the best version of yourself, who you like and respect, regardless of what your boss does? You can pause the video now and take a moment to write down your objective and check that it's both positive and within your control. The next question in the contract is why? What is the value of this goal? What would you be able to do when you've achieved this goal? We often presume that we know why we want things, but putting these reasons into words has a powerful effect on our drive to make them happen. And looking ever deeper at our reasons for wanting things can often have the effect of refining our objective, and this in itself can be massively liberating. Perhaps moving us away from tired and failed attempts to change towards new possibilities. So we ask why again and again. Knowing why I want this, Why is it important for me? Who will I become when I've achieved this goal? Pause the video and take a moment to write down your answers to these questions. There's no right or wrong answer, just let the words flow from the pen and see what happens. The last big contracting question is, how will you know that this coaching session has been a success? We often use a kind of scaling tool to evaluate success. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is you just thinking about your objective and 10 is total commitment to making it happen, where are you now? How far up the scale could you get today in this session? How will you know that you've got there? This is absolutely key to recognizing the positive change that you're going to make. So draw a scale and identify what 1 is and what 10 is, and mark a point where you are. Now, mark the point where you'd like to be by the end of this video. The next big stage in the coaching arrow is solution-focused thinking. This is where a coach will ask positive, open questions and sometimes use or create activities to broaden the way of looking at change and the scope of possibility for the client. Or sometimes it's just a kind of conversation, but always structured by open questions. These questions are limitless, and they should be formulated in response to the objective that you set during your contract. But they're all created following a certain structure. Firstly, they're nearly always positive. And they're all open questions. That means they're questions where you can't give a yes or no answer, and they often demand plural responses. They're all questions where neither the coach nor the client already knows how the client will or should respond. It's also very common that these questions invite the client to project into an imaginary place or future. This can help bring insights or answers that are perfectly adapted to the client's needs at that moment. These are the ideas that no well-intentioned advisor would be able to come up with. Coaching presumes that you already have access to what you need to know, and that if you do need extra information, you have access to the most appropriate ways of getting hold of that information. One of the reasons people come to coaching is because they feel stuck and unable to create the future they want. These blocks are often mental and can be very strong in preventing change, but how to deal with them is tricky. Coaching doesn't examine or even try to understand blocks, but looks at ways of moving around them. And there are many helpful questions that might give insight into how to bypass these mental blocks. For example, what would become possible if there were no mental block? Or, if we were to put the mental block in a box where it's safe and we can access it if needs be and move that box to the side, what would be the next step to getting what you want? What might be the best question for you to help you move forward with your project? Who would be the best person to advise you? What do you think they would say if you asked for their help? Pause the video a moment and write down what comes to your mind. The solution-focused thinking part of a coaching session can last anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour. When I'm coaching, I often invite people to stand up during this part of the session, taking literal steps from an old way of thinking to a new and better adapted way. I also often ask people to draw pictures and diagrams, to write lists and letters to themselves. What helps you to think most clearly? What gets your creative juices flowing? Pause the video and write down your answers to these questions. Don't think too much at first. Put pen to paper and let the ideas flow. They may be awful or bad writing, but nobody else needs to see them. Put your judgment to one side for a moment and see what happens. The last section of the coaching arrow is the action plan. Again, this part of the session functions by asking open questions. A good one to start here would be, what's been the benefit of exploring these ideas? What have you learned about achieving your objective? Or, what decisions have you made? Then, and this is really the key to bringing about positive change, you need to ask a question that more or less means, what is the next step that you're going to take? Followed by, when are you going to take this step? And how committed are you to taking this step? And then you should ask questions like, what things could you do to make sure this step becomes a reality? How will you remember to do what you're planning? How might you check in on yourself to see that you're following your plan? And what are some alternative ways, times and places that you could take these steps? Pause the video and write down your answers to these questions. The last part of this video is also the last part of the coaching session. Celebration. Congratulations, you've just done your first coaching session. What's been the benefit of this experience for you? If you choose to make these changes happen, then they will happen, and you may recognise that there's no great mystery here. Coaching allows you to take change into your own hands by a process that you've done many times before. Whenever you've made a big decision to move house, to get married, to change jobs, you identify what you want and what it will change for you and what it will enable you to do. You think of different ways of how to make it happen. You take decisions and then you act. And that's it. Obviously, if this is easy for you, then you probably don't need coaching in this particular situation. But we all face challenges where we don't know how to proceed or where we find our progression is blocked. And so now you have this methodology to go back to basics and find ways to move forward by asking positive, open questions. Thank you for watching. I have other videos about coaching and I'll continue to make more. So if this has been useful, please go and look and see if there's anything else that may help you to bring great changes into your life.